So, if you're a policy advisor, especially in a context where faith plays a big role, you've got this constant, tricky challenge, right? How do you create policies for today's world that also stay true to timeless principles? It's a huge balancing act. Well, it turns out there's a framework for that, and that's exactly what we're going to break down in this explainer.
I mean, really think about it. This is the central dilemma. You're in the room, you're advising a leader. You have all these pressing, modern issues on one side, and this incredibly deep-rooted legal and ethical tradition on the other. So how do you build that bridge? How do you make sure your policies are both effective and principled?
The answer, it turns out, isn't about inventing something totally new. It's about understanding a very old and very dynamic relationship between two core Islamic concepts. The first is fiqh, which is jurisprudence, and the second is Siyasa Shariyya, or Sharia-based governance.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at what we're calling the 2 pillars of governance. Then we'll get some clear definitions and explore the 5 key ways they connect. From there, we'll see how this all comes together into a practical framework for policy, and then we'll wrap up by looking at the challenge of adapting these ideas to today's world.
Okay, let's start with a really simple analogy to get our heads around this. Think about building a society like you're constructing a massive, important building. You absolutely need 2 key people, the architect, who has the blueprint, and the master builder, who actually brings it all to life. So first up, we have fiqh. This is our architect's blueprint. It's the deep, scholarly science of understanding practical laws that come from core sources like the Quran and the Sunnah. It provides the super detailed rules, the foundational legal framework for, well, pretty much every part of life.
And here's our master builder, Siyasa Shariyya. This is the art of actual on-the-ground governance. It's about taking that blueprint and using it to manage public affairs, to run the state, and to really achieve the public good, all while staying aligned with the spirit of Sharia. This is where theory meets reality.
All right, so if fiqh is the blueprint and siyasa is the builder, how do they actually work together? The key thing to remember is they're not separate. They are deeply, deeply interconnected. So let's dive into the 5 essential links that tie them together. You can think of these as 5 core strategies for making sure your governance is both effective and ethical.
The source material we're looking at points to 5 specific ways these 2 fields are linked. And for a policy advisor, honestly, getting a grip on these 5 links is the whole key to understanding the framework and actually putting it to use.
And here they are. First, integration. Then, overlap. Third is a unity of purpose. Fourth, and this one's crucial, is ijtihad, or scholarly reasoning. And finally, cooperation. Let's break each one down.
Okay, number 1, integration. Fiqh gives us those foundational principles. Take, for example, a core rule like preventing harm takes precedence over bringing benefit. That's the blueprint. Siyasa Shariyya then takes that principle and creates concrete policy, things like environmental regulations or traffic laws, to actually prevent that harm in the real world. You see, they're really 2 sides of the same coin.
Number 2 is overlap. Now, fiqh is broad. It deals with everything from an individual's prayers to huge commercial contracts. Siyasa, our builder, is more focused. It zooms in on the big picture, public affairs, managing the state. But their shared ground, their common territory, is applying Sharia principles to build a just and orderly society for everyone. Third, they have a unity of purpose. The architect and the builder are working towards the exact same ultimate goals. In Islamic tradition, these are known as the maqasid, the higher objectives of Sharia, and they are the 5 essentials that any just society has to protect: religion, life, intellect, lineage, and property. Fiqh defines them, and siyasa creates the state structures to guard them. So how does the system stay relevant? How does it adapt to the modern world? Well, that's where the 4th link comes in, ijtihad. Think of this as the engine of adaptation. It's the rigorous, scholarly methodology for applying principles to new situations. Fiqh provides this powerful toolkit for reasoning, and siyasa uses that toolkit to tackle modern challenges you just won't find in old texts. Things like regulating cryptocurrency or handling a global pandemic.
And the 5th link, cooperation, is summed up perfectly by this quote. Basically, governance without the blueprint can just go off the rails and deviate from its principles. But a blueprint without a builder? Well, it might just end up as a piece of paper with very little real-world impact. They absolutely need each other for governance to be both principled and practical.
Okay, so we've walked through the theory. Now let's get really practical. Let's take all of this and shape it into a framework that you, as a policy advisor, can actually use. How does all this translate into distinct roles and responsibilities in the real world of governance?
This table right here, this is your key takeaway. It's the whole thing in a nutshell. When it comes to integration, Fiqh gives you the universal rule. Siyasa applies it to a specific context. For purpose, Fiqh defines that big picture objective. Siyasa creates the actual policy to get you there. With ijtihad, Fiqh develops the toolkit for reasoning. Siyasa uses that toolkit on new problems. And through cooperation, Fiqh keeps the policy principled, while Siyasa makes sure those principles are practical.
Now, it's so important to remember this is not a static model. It's a living, breathing process. The relationship between the blueprint and the builder is a constant conversation, always working to adapt timeless principles to our modern realities. And that brings us to our final forward-looking thought.
So we'll leave you with this question to chew on. When you look at the really complex challenges we face today, everything from digital governance and AI to climate change, what does the application of this framework even look like? As an advisor, how can you use this dynamic relationship to spark principled reasoning, to spark ijtihad, and help build a better, more just future?